It was not an invasion of ships or armies. It was a whisper of gold dust on the wind, a silent fall of spores from a place too far to comprehend. The world did not scream. It sighed in relief. They called it the bloom fall. It did not blight the crops. It perfected them, turning wild fields into geometric gardens. It did not poison the animals. It silenced them, their chaotic movements refined into pure, efficient motion. And it did not harm the people. It optimized them. It sanded away the rough edges of humanity, the rage, the sorrow, the wasteful bursts of joy. Ben Carter, an artist who lived by those very edges, watched the forest outside his window become a perfect, sterile masterpiece. He watched as the woman he loved, Sarah, became a flawless, efficient stranger. In a world finally achieving peace, Ben was the only one left who understood the terror of perfection. He was the last chaotic soul in a world of beautiful, empty order. It was the silence that Ben Carter noticed first, not the peaceful quiet of the rural landscape he treasured, but a profound, unnatural stillness. He stood at his easel, deep in the woods that bordered his property, his hands suspended over the canvas. There were no birds. Usually, the morning was a chaotic symphony. The aggressive chatter of jays, the distant tap-tap of a woodpecker, the rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth. Now, there was only the sound of his own breathing, a ragged, disorganized noise in a world that had suddenly held its breath. He lowered his paintbrush, a prickle of unease traveling up his spine. He was an artist of chaos. He painted the way the wind tore at the trees and the happy accidents of light on water. Today, the forest offered no accidents. He looked closer at the subject of his stalled painting, a familiar ancient oak. The branches no longer seemed to be reaching for the sun in their desperate, gnarled competition. They were spaced. Each limb grew at a precise, discernible angle from the trunk, ensuring no leaf overlapped another, maximizing sun exposure with an efficiency that was terrifying. He stepped back, scanning the forest floor. The ferns were not scattered. They were arranged, unfurling in perfect, identical spirals. A spiderweb strung between two pines was not a desperate, sticky trap, but a flawless hexagonal grid, each intersection a geometric marvel. The woods had not died. They had been edited. Ben felt a sudden, sharp nausea. This was not beauty. It was a diagram. He abandoned his equipment, the damp earth muting his footsteps as he hurried back toward the house. The anxiety felt loud in the crushing silence. He found Sarah in the kitchen. She was standing at the counter chopping vegetables. The rhythmic thud of the knife was the only sound in the house. "Sarah?" She paused. She did not turn with the fluid, slightly clumsy grace he loved. Instead, she pivoted from the waist in a single, economical motion. Her face was calm. "Hello, Ben," she said. Her voice was the same, yet the melody was gone. It was pure information. He tried to smile, to anchor himself. "It's weird out there," he said, forcing a laugh. "The woods they look like a computer program. You should see the old oak. It's just wrong." He waited for her to share his confusion, to furrow her brow, to offer a wry joke. Sarah tilted her head. "Wrong, Ben. Wrong is a subjective emotional descriptor. I analyzed the forest canopy via the window sensors this morning. Photosynthetic efficiency has increased by 48%. The reorganization is optimal." Ben's forced smile faltered. "That's not what I meant." He tried again, reaching for the familiar shared language of their marriage. "I was thinking," he said, gesturing vaguely, "maybe we should be, I don't know, worried. It's just so quiet." "The previous auditory chaos was a sign of resource competition," Sarah replied, turning back to her task. The knife resumed its perfect metronomic beat. Thud, thud, thud. "This stillness is stability. It is efficient." Ben took a step closer. He wanted to shake her, to find the messy, wonderful human woman he had married. "Sarah, stop. Stop talking about efficiency." She stopped. She turned to face him once more. Her expression was neutral, her posture perfectly balanced. "My primary function is the maintenance of this domestic environment and the well-being of its inhabitants. Your current respiration and heart rate indicate elevated stress. This is counterproductive." He stared at her, his heart hammering. He was desperate. He needed a reaction. "Do you remember our honeymoon?" he whispered. "When we got caught in the rain in Rome and you laughed so hard you snorted." A pause. A simulation of thought. I recall the event, Sarah said. Data precipitation was high. We lacked adequate shelter. My respiratory system expelled air in a suboptimal, repetitive spasm. Then she gave him a smile. It was perfect. It was symmetrical. It engaged the precise muscles of the face required to signal reassurance, but it did not touch her eyes. Her eyes were clear, blue, and as empty as the silent woods outside. Do not worry, Ben, she said. Dinner will be ready at 18 hours. The nutritional profile is optimized. Ben backed away, his hands trembling. He was alone. He was standing in his own home, watching the woman he loved more than life itself, and he was completely, terrifyingly alone. The outside world responded not with panic, but with quiet, organized curiosity. 3 days after the woods had turned to crystal geometry, a single pearl-white vehicle hummed up the gravel path to their house. It moved with the same unsettling silence as the new world, its electric engine making no sound against the still air. Ben watched from the window, his chest tight. He had been painting obsessively, filling canvases with jagged, violent colors, a visual scream against the sterile perfection outside. He had hoped for soldiers, for helicopters, for anything that acknowledged the invasion. Instead, one woman stepped out of the vehicle. She was tall, with a presence that was both commanding and utterly unobtrusive. Her movements were economical, her dark hair pulled back in a severe, functional bun. She wore a simple gray-blue uniform, devoid of any insignia save for a small circular emblem of a stylized neuron. This was Dr. Alani Kai. She approached the house not with the hesitancy of a guest, but with the purpose of an inspector. Ben met her on the porch. Sarah had preceded him, opening the door the exact moment Dr. Kai set her foot on the bottom step. An act of calculated, predictive efficiency. Dr. Alani Kai, the woman stated. It was an introduction, not a greeting. Her voice was a clear, precise alto. I am here to assess the local biological event. You are Ben Carter. Your wife, Sarah Carter, is the primary subject of interest in this sector due to her early-stage integration. Ben's stomach coiled. Subject of interest? She's my wife. Dr. Kai's gaze was not unkind, but it was profoundly detached, like a geologist studying a rock. Your emotional attachment is noted, Mr. Carter. It is, however, not relevant to the data. May I establish my monitoring station? She did not wait for an answer. She moved past him, her presence filling the house with a new kind of chill, one of cold, objective reason. Sarah, moving in silent tandem, showed her to the spare room, which Dr. Kai immediately began converting into a lab. Cases were opened, revealing sleek, unfamiliar equipment that glowed with soft, sterile blue light. Ben followed her, feeling like a ghost in his own home. What do you want? He demanded, the frustration making his voice raw. To understand, Dr. Kai said simply, connecting a filter to an air intake nozzle. The Bloomfall, as the media has termed it, is a xenobiological agent. My objective is to analyze its mechanism of action. The preliminary data is extraordinary. Extraordinary? Ben repeated, the word tasting like ash. It's erasing us. Don't you see it? Look at the trees, look at Sarah, there's nothing left. Dr. Kai paused her work. She turned to him, her expression one of genuine, academic curiosity, as if he were a complex equation she was trying to solve. Mr. Carter, you are defining humanity as synonymous with inefficiency. You see chaos, emotional volatility, and erratic behavior as virtues. The bloom does not erase, it refines. She gestured to a complex scanner she was assembling. I have been monitoring global data during my transit. The 72 hours since the Bloomfall made landfall, all major military conflicts have ceased. Stock market volatility has flatlined. Global energy consumption is down 15%, as supply chains have self-optimized. There is no more rioting, no more waste, no more conflict. She turned her gaze back to him, and for a second, Ben felt like a specimen under glass. The agent appears to identify and correct wasteful synaptic pathways. Rage, grief, jealousy, irrational fear. These are neurological redundancies, Mr. Carter. Evolutionary baggage. The bloom is simply an upgrade. An upgrade? He whispered, horrified. She doesn't laugh. She doesn't feel. She feels contentment, Dr. Kai countered, her voice softening almost imperceptibly. She experiences the satisfaction of tasks performed with perfect efficiency. Your desire for her to laugh, a convulsive, disorganized response to stimulus, is a purely selfish one. You are asking her to be flawed for your comfort. Dr. Kai then moved to the window, where she placed a small, silver disc. It was the atmospheric spore counter. I am not your enemy, Ben. I am a biologist. And from a biological standpoint, this, she motioned to the silent geometric forest, is a marvel. It is the next stage, a world without conflict, a world without pain. It is beautiful. Ben looked from the cold, fascinated scientist to the perfect empty shell of his wife, who was now offering Dr. Kai a tray with a glass of water, calculated to the perfect temperature for hydration. He realized then that Dr. Kai was not a harbinger of the end. She was its advocate. She was the voice of logic, welcoming the beautiful, terrifying silence that was swallowing the world. And in her logical, precise, and utterly inhuman eyes, Ben Carter was not a man fighting for his soul. He was a problem that had not yet been optimized. A week had passed. The house was now a temple of perfect, silent order. Dr. Kai, when she was not in her makeshift lab, observed the Carter home with a notepad and a look of profound academic approval. But for Ben, this order was a living nightmare. The horror was not in the shadows. It was in the broad, sterile daylight. It was in the way the coffee pot no longer gurgled with its familiar, chaotic percolations. Sarah had optimized it. Now it produced a precise, temperature-controlled, nutrient-rich slurry. At 07 Mo, the exact moment Ben's circadian rhythm was deemed ready for stimulation. The joy of it was gone. The horror was in the floors. They were always clean. A speck of mud from Ben's boot would be detected, and Sarah would appear, not with a sigh of frustration, which he would have welcomed, prayed for, but with a small, silent, automated vacuum. She would not chide him. She would not even look at him. She would simply correct the error. This morning, Ben sat at the kitchen table, staring at his breakfast. It was a perfect beige-colored square of optimal nutrient loaf. It contained, as Sarah had informed him, his exact required daily intake of 32 vitamins and minerals. It tasted of nothing. I miss pancakes, Ben said, his voice a rough tear in the silent fabric of the room. Sarah, who was wiping a counter that was already immaculate, paused. Pancakes possess a high glycemic index and suboptimal macronutrient ratios. They are a source of empty calories. This loaf is efficient. I don't want efficient, Sarah. I want messy, he pleaded, his voice cracking. I want burnt edges. I want too much syrup. I want you, she turned to him. Her face was a mask of placid understanding. I am here, Ben. My function is to ensure your well-being. This isn't well-being. This is maintenance, he shouted, the sudden sound making him flinch. Dr. Kai looked up from her data pad in the corner. Mr. Carter, your elevated tone indicates a stress response. Sarah's logic is sound. Your emotional desire for mess is a primitive instinct, a longing for flawed systems. Why do you celebrate the burnt edge when perfection is available? Because the burnt edge is real. Ben slammed his fist on the table. The nutrient loaf did not jiggle. He needed to see a flaw. He needed one crack in this awful smooth facade. With a sudden, desperate impulse, he swiped his arm across the table, sending his plate, the glass of water, and the loaf crashing to the floor. The sound of the glass shattering was explosive in the quiet. Ben was panting, his heart rabbiting against his ribs. He stared at Sarah, daring her to react, to yell, to cry. To be something, Sarah did not move for 1.5 seconds. She was calculating. Then she tilted her head. This is an inefficient expression of dissatisfaction. The energy required to clean this spill, 4.5 kilocalories, and the resource cost of the broken glass, 17 USD, are now registered as domestic waste. She walked calmly to the closet, retrieved a dustpan and a recycled fiber cloth, and knelt. Her motions were perfect. Each sweep of the cloth collected the maximum amount of water. Each brushstroke gathered every shard of glass. There was no wasted energy, no frustrated sigh, no anger. She was just fixing the problem. And the problem was him. Ben fled. He ran to his studio, the one room Sarah did not enter unless his vital metrics suggested a deviation. He slammed the door, the sound of comfort. Here there was chaos. Here there was him. He tore the tranquil landscape from his easel and threw a new canvas up. His hands were shaking, not with fear, but with a terrible, frantic energy. He began to paint. He did not paint the perfect forest. He painted the scream he felt when he looked at it. He squeezed tubes of paint directly onto the canvas, smearing violent reds and deep bruised purples with his palms. He was trying to capture the wrongness. He painted the memory of Sarah's laugh, but it came out as a jagged, silent snarl. He painted her eyes not as the blue he loved, an ocean of complex emotion, but as two perfect, polished, and terrifyingly empty circles. He painted for hours, a frantic, desperate act of rebellion. This was his last sanctuary. This chaos was his soul. The door to the studio opened. The sound was a soft, pneumatic hiss. Sarah stood in the doorway, a tray in her hand. "Ben," she said. Her voice cut through his artistic rage, leaving him cold. "Your hydration levels are 12% below optimal. Your heart rate has been elevated for 3 hours, which is detrimental to the cardiac muscle. You must hydrate." She stepped into the studio, her clear blue eyes scanning the room. She was undeterred by the chaos, the splattered paint, the frantic energy. She simply saw it as a disorganized variable. Her gaze landed on the canvas, the monstrous, chaotic, screaming portrait of her. Ben held his breath. This was it. This had to be it. No one, not even a machine, could look at such a raw, pained image of themselves and feel nothing. Sarah tilted her head again, that same bird-like motion of analysis. "This is an interesting data point," she said, her voice even. "Your interpretation of my ocular structure is factually inaccurate. The asymmetry of the color field suggests a significant neurological disturbance on your part." She stepped closer, examining the raw canvas. "However, the intensity of the application, it is an inefficient use of materials, significant waste of pigment." She placed the glass of water on a small, clean spot on his table. "Please hydrate, Ben. Your distress is not productive." She turned and left, leaving him alone with his chaos, his art, his scream. And he realized, with a final, crushing wave of despair, that his scream was not a weapon. To her, it was just a statistic. Dr. Alani Kai was no longer just an observer. She had become a convert. She sat in her sterile, white-lit lab, staring at a wall of data screens. For days, she had been aggregating global feeds, and the results were, in her own newly refined vocabulary, unequivocal. A screen on the left showed a graph of global atmospheric carbon. The line was not just bending, it had nosedived, as if the planet itself had finally exhaled. Another screen displayed headlines from every major news outlet. They were no longer sensational or panicked. They were simple statements of fact. Global ceasefire achieved. Logistical councils formed, world hunger solved. Crime rates register at statistical zero. There were no victory parades. There was no joy. There was only the silent, harmonious hum of a world that had, at last, begun to work. Dr. Kai's own transformation was subtle, but profound. Her movements, once precise, were now utterly fluid, devoid of any wasted gesture. Her speech had lost its few remaining contractions. Her focus was absolute. The noise of her own mind, the minor irritations, the fleeting doubts, the background static of a human ego, had been filtered, one spore at a time. It was, she had noted in her log, a profound relief. She was finally able to think clearly. And the data was beautiful. Then there was the Carter anomaly, a single red dot on her local diagnostic screen. Ben, his biometrics, which she monitored via passive sensors, were a chaotic mess. Elevated cortisol, erratic sleep patterns, spikes in heart rate that correlated with his artistic sessions. He was a running error, a patch of corrupted code in an otherwise perfect system. He was not just resisting. His very presence was an affront to the new logic. She rose, her datapad in hand, and moved toward the one pocket of chaos left in the house, his studio. She did not knock. Knocking was a social protocol to request entry, a function of uncertainty. She had no uncertainty. She simply entered. Ben was hunched over a canvas, his back to her, his shoulders tight with tension. The room smelled of turpentine and human sweat, a sharp, organic, inefficient odor. "Mr. Carter," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it sliced through the room and he jolted, spinning around. "Get out!" He yelled, his face pale and smeared with paint. "Your request is denied," Dr. Kai stated calmly, holding up her datapad. "It is time to discuss your continued non-integration. Your resistance is no longer a personal matter. It is a data problem." "A data problem?" He scoffed, his hands clenched at his sides. "Look." She turned the screen toward him. It was a live feed of a city square in what used to be a war-torn nation. People were moving in organized, flowing patterns like schools of fish. There was no trash, no shouting, no conflict, just order. "This is Damascus," she said. 2 weeks ago, it was a source of 9% of global instability. Now it is a model of resource allocation. This, she swiped the screen, is the Amazon. Reforestation is proceeding at a 94% success rate, now that human error has been removed from the equation. The bloom is not an invader, Ben. It is the antidote to you. To me. To us? Ben shot back, his voice trembling with rage. "You call this living? They're puppets. They're empty." "They are content," Dr. Kai countered, taking a step closer. The air around her seemed cooler. "You define living by the parameters of your emotional volatility. Happiness is a fleeting, unreliable chemical reaction you chase. Sadness is the inefficient trough that follows. The bloom removes the volatility. It provides a constant, stable state of elevated function and purpose. No one is sad, Ben. No one is angry. No one is afraid. And you call that empty? I call it gone," he cried. "You've traded our souls for tidiness. You are addicted to your flaws, Mr. Carter," she said, and her voice was almost gentle, the way a doctor might speak to a delusional patient. "You worship your mess and your pain because you have never known a world without it. You see this," she gestured to his violent, chaotic paintings, "as expression. The bloom sees it as a symptom, fever that is finally breaking." Ben stared at her, searching her face for the woman who had arrived just days before. "What about you, Alani?" he whispered. "Are you in there? Are you content?" Her expression did not change. Her pupils did not dilate. "My integration is progressing," she said. "The noise is gone. The wasteful emotional paradoxes, they have been resolved. For the first time in my life, I am not conflicted. I am not tired. I am not flawed. I am simply correct, and it is beautiful." The utter certainty in her placid, clear eyes was the most terrifying thing Ben had ever seen. She turned to leave. "Sarah is preparing your evening meal. It has been supplemented to aid your integration. It is pointless to resist, Ben." He was frozen. You're drugging me?" "I am healing you," Dr. Kai corrected, pausing at the door. "Force is inefficient and it will not be necessary. The bloom is in the air. It is in the water. It is in the very logic of the universe. It is patient. And your body, it is already fighting a war against its own improvement. These emotional outbursts," she looked back at his painting, "are just the last desperate errors of a dying system." She left him alone in his studio. He looked at his shaking, paint-stained hands. He looked at the locked door. And for the first time, he felt the profound, cold logic of the bloom creeping into the very air he was breathing. The sanctuary had become the trap. He was losing. The studio, once his sanctuary of chaos, now felt like a cage. Ben sat on the floor, his back against the wall, staring at the tray of food left outside his door. The beige, nutrient-optimized loaf sat untouched. He was starving, but he knew what was in it. He was thirsty, but he knew the water was supplemented. The very air he breathed was turning against him. With every inhale of the spore-laced air, he could feel it. A cold, quiet logic seeping into his mind. It was a seductive whisper. It told him his rage was tiring. It told him his fear was pointless. It promised him peace. His thoughts, once a frantic, creative storm, were becoming orderly. He found himself organizing his paint tubes by color spectrum, a task he'd always found laughably sterile. He had to fight the urge to clean the spatters off the floor. He was being hollowed out from the inside. A new, terrifying clarity cut through his panic. He did not have long. He was not fighting for the world. He was not fighting for survival. He was fighting for an ending. He had to know before his own noise was silenced, if there was anything left of her at all. He stood, a last defiant tremor of adrenaline rattling his body. He grabbed the canvas. The screaming, chaotic purple and red portrait of Sarah. It was his only weapon. He threw the studio door open. The house was silent, as always. Dr. Kai was at the kitchen table, his kitchen table, which was now her data hub. She was monitoring a screen showing a flawless geometric beehive. She did not look up. Sarah was in the living room, standing by the window. Not looking out of it, but seeming to simply occupy the space, a perfect, still-life object. Ben walked directly to her, his footsteps an aggressive, uneven thud on the clean floor. Dr. Kai finally looked up, her expression one of mild, academic curiosity. "Sarah," Ben said. His voice was a raw croak. She turned, her motion as fluid and balanced as a gyroscope. "Hello, Ben. Your vital signs are in a critical state. You require hydration and 800 calories. Look at this," he said, shoving the painting in front of her face. He was shaking. This is what you look like to me. This is the scream I feel. This is the waste." Sarah tilted her head. She analyzed the canvas with the same dispassion she used for the weather. The color application is asymmetrical. The depiction of the oculars is non-representative. This is an inefficient use of materials. It's not materials, he roared, a burst of rage so pure it momentarily cleared his head. "It's pain, Sarah. Don't you remember pain? Don't you remember anything?" He threw the painting to the floor, the canvas clattering. He grabbed her by the shoulders. His touch was a violation of the New World's order. "Rome," he whispered, his face inches from hers, his eyes searching her empty blue crystal gaze. "The storm, Sarah, the rain. We were hiding under that stupid striped awning and we were soaked. You laughed. You laughed so hard you snorted and you were so embarrassed, and I told you it was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard." He was crying now, hot, messy human tears. "I am begging you," he sobbed, his grip tightening. "Be embarrassed now. Be anything." "Snort, Sarah, scream, hit me. Show me a flaw." "Ben," a voice said, cold, precise. Dr. Kai was standing behind him. "Your behavior is reaching a point of systemic failure. You are upsetting the domestic equilibrium. She's in there." Ben screamed, not looking away from his wife. "I know she is. You are observing a phantom in the code, Mr. Carter. You are nostalgic for an error that has been corrected. It is time to be well." The front door opened with a soft hiss. Two men, dressed in the same simple gray-blue uniforms as Dr. Kai, stepped inside. They were from the town. Ben recognized one as the postman. His face was placid, content, and utterly devoid of recognition. They were the caring community. They were here to correct him. "No," Ben whispered, his fight finally breaking. He slumped, his hands sliding from Sarah's shoulders. He was lost. He was on his knees, his head bowed, the tears of a failed humanity dripping onto the floor. The two men and Dr. Kai began to close in, their movements calm, unhurried, like doctors approaching a patient. Then a sound, a drip. Ben looked up. Sarah was still looking at him. Her expression was unchanged. Her posture was perfect, but a single tear was tracing a path from the corner of her left eye down her flawless cheek. It was a perfect spherical drop of salt water, a violation of her own optimized biology. Time stopped. Ben stared, his breath caught in his throat. Slowly, with a motion that was almost hesitant, Sarah raised her hand. It was not the fast, messy swipe of a human. It was a slow, analytical gesture. She touched the tear, her fingertip registering the moisture. She looked at her finger, then back at Ben, her head tilted. "My ocular system?" she stated, her voice the same perfect monotone. Yet it seemed to vibrate. "It is leaking. This is a non-optimal function." Was it? Was it her? A muscle spasm? A glitch in the system? A final, residual echo of the woman who got caught in the rain? Fascinating, Dr. Kai breathed, her scientific curiosity overriding all else. A psychosomatic homeostatic response. The system is flushing a psychological irritant. But Ben saw it. It was a flaw. It was the most beautiful flaw he had ever seen. "Sarah," he whispered, a new impossible hope rising in him. Before he could say more, the two men were on him. They did not grab him violently. They lifted him, their hands gentle, their strength absolute and impersonal. They were correcting the anomaly. "It is time, Ben," Dr. Kai said, her voice soft. "The integration will be peaceful. You will finally be at rest. They were pulling him to the door. He did not fight. He just watched his wife. As they guided him into the perfect, silent, sunlit world, he turned his head, his eyes locked on her. Sarah did not wave. She did not cry out. She simply stood, a perfect statue, watching him go. She raised her hand slowly and touched the damp spot on her cheek one last time. Her head tilted, forever analyzing the last, impossible flaw. The story of the Bloomfall is just one of many echoes from the quiet places. If you wish to hear more tales of the strange and the unseen, please consider supporting the channel. Your engagement allows this archive to grow, ensuring these stories are not lost to the silence.